I witnessed somebody who had cancer in all their lymph nodes and in their liver, within 10 minutes, have the resonance field come through their body and their systems just with awareness itself. Awareness itself in witnessing that as the resonance field and the energy is being witnessed, it starts to make that shift because we're having a co-creative dance. I was having a co-creative dance with that. And 10 minutes, all of it, intershift out, everything closed back up. Most beautiful experience to move through, also to watch. And that person left and
And welcome back to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I've been looking forward to this conversation as every moment is as potent as the last one or the future one. We are in the now moment, and the now is all we have, and I'm loving it. And I want to welcome to the podcast the Z Collective, a conscious wisdom teaching that expands past the limitations of your finite mind and gives you a re-up of who you really are. I'm very grateful to have you in the podcast today, my dear friend. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Very grateful to be here.
Yeah, it's always welcome conversations that raise the awareness and return people to who they are. It's an attunement.
Absolutely, it is.
So why don't we give people a little abbreviated version of how you got here?
Oh, I would say from my perspective, I got here through experience and choice.
Right.
Just being present with where I'm at right now.
Now, through your own creation from birth to now, what was the sort of the timeline for your self-realization that there was an access to this, what we'd call higher sense or awakening or now moment, source information, divinity, universe, Buddha, Tao, God?
All of it.
Yeah, how was that met for you?
Well, from a very, very young age in this physical experience, I have a lot of memory of just experiences with energy in and of itself. For me, at a young age, it was there's lots of beings around me. I knew that they could go into physical and they could go out of physical. So I very much so interacted with them. Most of them for me were animals at the time. I had a lot of animal friends moving through the space. Heading into my teens, there was a period between about 12 and 18 where I was met with constructs and needing to experience what it was like to completely shut that down. Whether that be through school, which the majority of it was, through friends, through parental experiences, obviously. I shut a majority of it down until I was about 19. And I started to experience things like electronical stuff. Electronical, that's funny. Electronic stuff flashing on and off. I would see more of these beings coming into space. I would hear and sense and see what you would call, if you want to call them that, guides or helpers or aspects of consciousness that came in to kind of show, hey, look, there's something out here that's more than you. It would be like driving down the street and I would hear, hey, someone's going to cut you off here. It's going to be a dangerous accident. And I would feel something and it would shift and the car wouldn't be there. So working through no time spaces around that age. I would say around age 23, this got so intense in my body and my body started to experience what you call sicknesses, going into the doctor, saying, oh, hey, like you have this, going back, no, you don't have this. So it'd be like this on and off situation. And that was my first near-death experience in my body and understanding that. And during that phase and leaving my system, it was home. It was everything. It was all the things. It was met with a lot of love. It was met with, if you want to call that the Great Mother, it was met with, hey, you know who you are. You know why you're there. And from my experience, I was there for, it was no space and time, a very, very long time. And it was just a remembrance of, oh, look at all these spaces I have experienced. I've been in so many different places all at once and experiencing these things, and I understood why I came into this experience. And I of course had the choice. I heard you have a choice. You want to come down and experience and understand your knowing in the space, and I did decide to do that. Um, so after that experience, it was a really visceral just knowing. I could understand the human condition. I could understand what was moving through bodies. And of course, that was working with the self first, understanding my body, what was going on with it, what was my experience like. It was taking it very slow. Um, and then through that process, realizing that space, it was a retrigger into my own trauma, which had ended up being in a marriage for a period of time that had to do with ritualistic abuse. And I had blocked that out. I had blocked that out of my system. I had blocked it out of everything. And that's why my system was getting sick. So remembering all of that and my choice into experiencing what it was like to be in the ritualistic abuse, what happened, all the details, everything that was very super visceral, all the emotional aspects that come with that piece. I moved through that space and then took a shamanic route. Had a teacher come in and worked very intensely with that teacher in understanding that way. And I say that way specifically because there's all kinds of ways. You can choose any type of way you want to look at to get back into the remembrance of who you are and waking up and knowing that you're a grand part of this picture of even if you call it consciousness, even consciousness would be a perspective. It'd be a human perspective of what that is, right? Understanding what that is. So I took that route and then shifted my perspective into I want to experience these several different different aspects of human reality. So then I chose many different paths to take. Whether that was like training and ascension, which in the end, any training that you go into is going to take you back into self, into realizing, is that right for me? Is that not right for me? Is this an experience that I want to have? Is it an experience that I don't want to have? And all of that culminating together to understand that we are an aspect of consciousness and here to raise conscious awareness, uh, understanding and knowing that there's a human perspective or collective out there that's working through the process. And how can I interact with it? How can I be with it? How can I sit with it? How do I know that I'm in myself with it? And it's a constant dance of choosing, reacting, being still, experiencing energy, diving into it to experience something just so that I can understand and go back to my own truth.
And what would you say is the potency of that self-realization?
Love.
Hmm.
Love for me
Mhm.
was understanding of that no matter what, understanding that I had left, come back, knowing all these different places and spaces, knowing that there is no time and space, knowing that we're here right now, that in all of that, I was carried and I was loved through the process.
Hmm. And how is that in relation to a remedy for your wisdom teaching and furthermore the things that you would tune others to help
hmm
them remember?
hmm
How was
hmm
that?
So with that perspective, and everybody has a different view on what love is, right? It's my experience of just coming back to self and my knowing of consciousness. So love, coming back into self, that's intertwined for me, and that's how I work with my teachings or with anybody.
Hmm. You use love as the baseline of
I use love as
self-realization.
I do use that aspect. Now that is there's many sequencings to that. There's many aspects to that, many layers to that of what like love is, what love could be. So for me, I go back into a feeling of self because there's no words in that space, being encased and encompassed by everything that all that is.
Mhm.
I can't really have a verbal acuity for it because there really isn't a resonance. It's a knowing.
Mm.
But when I go back to that feeling of that and that energy of that, that's what
Mhm.
I work out of.
And what's the evidence? I mean, experiential moment is, in my opinion, through any Taoist teaching that's been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and I've been teaching it consciously for 36.
hmm
The point of, and that's just me remembering I've been a Taoist priest and a Taoist immortal for several thousands of lives. These
Uh-huh.
are all these moments of self realization.
Mhm.
But the potency is okay. You made a really valid point. Love is subjective, in my opinion, until otherwise noted. You know what you know. You don't know what you don't know.
True.
Most people are living a hallmark throwaway.
Oh, for
And
sure.
with that, that returns to, you could look at love as, unicorns and rainbows, and love for me could be razor blades and bunny rabbits.
For sure.
And so that baseline, I think what I like to water things down for in relation to an infantile sort of childlike state
Mhm.
is to understand that love is just one facet of the diamond.
Mhm.
That love, once met, is what we call energy potential that is
Okay.
just derived from your attention. Your most valuable commodity is your attention. And
Mhm.
your attention creates what my dear friend, the Buddhist monk Martin, would call dukkha,
Okay.
distortion. And
Distortion.
that
Mhm.
distortion has this potency that we look as a commodity, a currency within this realm, dimension,
Sure.
state, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
We call it the material. The
Mhm.
material state that you can craft this energy potential, and it comes in this incredible form. It's vibratory, frequential, and
Yep.
ultimately holds resonance. That resonance, if met, oh yes, it will be yours. Oh yes, it will. Oh yes, as any manifesting teacher would say, acquire the resonance and reveal whatever it is that you desire, you're
Mhm.
desirous of,
Mhm.
will be yours. Oh yes, it will. Now, that would also, in essence, come from a place of lack. So
Sure.
when someone is chasing something, which
Mhm.
what we call the bite of the spiritual dragon, because most people get these epiphanies. They heard grandma, they have a vivid dream, they could see dead people, they're feeling energy. I had a
Sure.
Kundalini experience. I mean,
Sure.
it's an ongoing awakening for any seeker. And
For
all
sure.
these things are all valid points of potency,
Mhm.
yet if not met with a regulated method to the madness, as I like to call it, and we refer to it as the infrastructure, the internal alchemy. We refer to it as Nigong, which is
Uh-huh.
the internal power, and we're cultivating the Nidan, which is the internal alchemy,
Mhm.
robust levels of Dantians, which is the
Right.
elixir field. That
Mhm.
immortal elixir is what we call the primordial mother. That's the substance, the Fajin.
Okay.
And so
Mhm.
it is potent. So everything has a crescendo and a cascading effect
Mhm. Mhm.
from the seeker's perspective. Within Taoism, the womb, the primordial void, the primordial mother, the creation of all things, is
Yes.
the animation behind consciousness. Consciousness is the animation of the Shen, we call the spirit.
Got
Shen
it.
is the
Mhm.
animation of the energy. Energy is the animation of the physical body, and so forth and so on. It
Mhm.
returns from the substance, the material state of this vibratory frequential
Yep.
resonance,
Mhm.
and it's now transmitted as this symbiosis between the dance of yin and yang, which
Mhm.
yin is the inversion of all colors and yang is the admission of all colors. And your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, is to find that center point, that vesica, that unification that we refer to. Now we're dancing, my dear
Mhm.
friend, the
Mhm.
collective. That
Mhm.
charge you're getting up your spine right now is that very knowing. This
Mhm.
is what my parapsychologist friends would call, we call this psychokinesis. Yes.
Psychokinesis. Mhm.
Yeah, this is the substance. You're experiencing the visceral kinesthetic semantic response of
Mhm.
energy potential.
Mhm.
And, I just get to see it and experience it if I choose to, because that's part of sensory perception, which would fall under that whole blanket of clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling,
Sure.
healing, all that kind
Sure.
of stuff that you're embodied into. And I've been teaching for decades.
Mhm.
It's not something that is just a gift to one person. Everyone has the ability to access it. They just,
Yes.
as you said, when the student arrives, the master will reveal himself, or something
Mhm.
to that conclusion. The
Sure.
student is the teacher is the student within the Taoist path.
Mhm.
All these things culminate and they fuse together.
Yes.
So with that, so you use self-evidence, and I think you referred to shamanism. Is that
Mhm.
still a potent part of your repertoire?
It's quite an aspect. Yes.
Okay. And it's interesting because, I do a lot of community work with several different reservations around this
Okay.
area. And
Hmm.
so I'll leave those anonymous as such. Maybe they don't want to promote the fact that they're being healed by a Taoist teacher, whatever you call it. But,
Sure.
people are in need. And, this potency of indigenous practices,
Hmm.
sometimes you need to remember, and it may not come in the conventional path that you have essentially idolized from your own realization, which furthermore brings us back to the turbulent relationship and ultimate breakup you had with conventional or organized religion. You referred to it
Correct.
briefly. Would you like to
Hmm.
elaborate on that?
Religion. Yes, I would love to. So my breakup, I'm going to call it a breakup with religion. I would say from a young age, let's see, it would be Mormonism. I want to say I left that church about 12 years old.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Uh, that realization. Now, my parents, they didn't strictly enforce that. So that's another aspect of that. But coming out of that, I honestly don't remember much of those teachings. It was like almost like it was kind of wiped clean. I didn't remember certain facets of it.
Mhm.
I came out of that and went into my period of closing down and shutting down. I did do that after that. But underneath that, I didn't have a visceral like this is how it was. I came out of that saying like there's something more to this and also that's not what I believe in. So
Right.
that was my initial breakdown of that aspect of religion.
Right. So what mesmerized you to the shamanic path of healing? There has to be a substance. For me, I have to have evidence. So
Sure.
from a path of self-realization, from a Taoist seeker to a knower, it
Hmm.
starts with a spark of desire. Desire creates inquiry. Inquiry then
Sure.
nurtures contemplation. Contemplation moves into curiosity. Curiosity then blossoms hopium.
Sure.
That's a potent thing, hopium. Hopium then
Hmm.
generates this founded belief system that everyone runs on, and their
Yes.
belief system is always met with experience. So the
Right.
experiential moment is the validation for the seeker that determines what they believe and ultimately what they know. And that doesn't mean just because you know what you know, you don't
Sure.
know what you don't know. It
Yes.
doesn't necessarily mean you're ascended to a state of all knowing, a state of all
Of course.
realization of the now moment.
Hmm.
So what is it that kept you on that path?
My
Um,
oh yes, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
My
Yeah.
initial spark into shamanism would have been right after my near-death experience and understanding that I had been a shaman so many times in so many lifetimes. And that's the knowing I came back with. And as soon as that knowing came in, then my teachers just showed up, as you said. I was ready.
Yeah, and, you get that sledgehammer, right?
Totally.
For me, I have a very vivid uh, relationship with my childhood, and it's first started with the spark at the age of 4, being able to see through my hand into the other room and looking inside people's bodies,
Oh, hmm.
and I
Yep.
was obsessed with superheroes,
Okay.
and so I was conflicted by the age of 10 because that obsession and being nurtured by a single parent, my mother was a radical feminist. So I spent my whole life around feminine energy and
Okay.
what some people might call divine feminine, whatever you want to call it, a very yin infrastructure. So my insight, my intuitive state was heightened instantaneously and quite frankly brought on and activated what we call within Taoism yin eyes, which gives you access to all the clear senses.
Uh-huh.
And
Yep.
so it was almost instantaneous. And, sitting around a dinner table while people are pontificating over, academic accolades, and they're, nurturing a glass of red wine, but speaking
Hmm.
on this philosophy and more insight from the intellect to the intuitive state was my whole life. So I spent all my time around, which then brought people to many conflicted opinions about who I was, because
Sure.
it crossed over into, at the age of 10. discovering bodybuilding and powerlifting because I had to feel into my physicality.
Sure.
And so that was met due to the adverse effects of bullying because I was so fundamentally against the grain of society, and they could not handle the potency of my eviscerating them verbally with words that they could not even comprehend. That took them 3 days to find some form of a dictionary or a thesaurus that could actually give them an understanding of what I just said. So
Sure.
this sort of led into my first, well, actually at the age of 8, I got hit by a car
Okay.
head on.
Mhm.
And so that was my near-death experience. Well, it wasn't
Got it.
near death. I died and I was thrown out of my body. My body fell on the side of the road. I got up. I walked towards my house with the one intention to say I love my mother before I died, and I just fell backwards. The second my body hit the ground again, I was off like Peter Pan, flying around, and I witnessed my mother just running to my lifeless body on the side of the road in absolute agony, and had to observe her in complete mourning for over 40 minutes until they dropped my body on a bed in the hospital, and I was drawn straight back in. It was wild,
Oh yeah.
absolutely wild. And you know, this would be in most people's catalyst. In your situation, it seems to be a catalyst for a self-realized state. I was still, I'm a little dumber than rock, so it took me a little bit more to solidify that knowing. But you know,
Got it.
at the age of 8, that's a lot to digest and
Oh
consume.
yes.
And then furthermore, you know, my solidifier was witnessing a physical healing, gangrenous flesh going back to pink in color in 40 minutes.
Okay.
And so in the same week, I went from that. I actually went from never meditating before because all I did was pick things up, crush them, and throw them. And so I was a bodybuilder feeling into that tactile flesh against steel and owning my own power, realizing that this intuitive state can be met with the power of the material. So merging yin and yang, and
Yes.
then having that power, realizing I had incredible insight that would be considered, you know, someone's idea of wisdom. Yet I was just empowering myself with that material, drawing it in and merging it like an alchemical little remedy to my reality. And so
Okay.
that started with the meditation. Never meditated before, so I didn't know
Okay.
what meditation was.
Mhm.
So I sat down. Long story short, anyone wants to listen to that, they've heard it 1,000 times. I sat down and was basically ready to throw in the towel. There's no way it was going to happen. I went to a meditation class. There's half a dozen people in the room. This grandmaster. I'm like a gorilla, overgrown gorilla, trying to scratch my ass. I'm sitting there. There's no way I'm going to create. I'm not going to create a lotus position. It's not happening. I was just in pain. I was more irritated. I was like, this is nonsense. Whatever this voice is that's telling me, this outer voice that's telling me to do meditation, this is nonsense. And it wasn't until this woman stood in front of me. I'm sitting, crouching down, and she still comes up to here, standing. And she said, now I want you to listen to my voice. And I'm like, listen. In my mind, I'm like, lady, this is not happening. Noise outside, inside, pain. It's not happening. And then she said, everything will fall away. And I kid you not, see, for almost 20 minutes from that moment, I captured silence.
Mm.
There was nothing. I was watching with my eyes open, and she was walking around the room as people were meditating the lotus position, eyes closed. I'm like, what the fuck? You're crazy, man. This is the potency, superhero shit that I've been looking for. This is stuff that I'm looking for, man, because
Yep.
this is what happens, right? The epiphany.
Yep.
And so that moved into the next day. I channeled my teacher, Lao Tzu. Had some 60-year-old veteran channel teacher have a stroke and call me an asshole and say, who the hell is you? I literally walked in as an overgrown ape, and they're like, you're in the wrong place. He's looking at me like, nah, what are you doing here? I don't know. I got this idea to go in here. Listen, you are not for this. And I'm like, whoa. This is the channeling class. Yes, you are not for this. And I'm like, no. I'm really here. That's what I want to learn. I'll take your money. Go ahead. Sit down with the rest of the class. And I channeled my
Okay.
teacher. and literally started seeing this, not just a vivid, but absolute potent, tangible image as I see you, which I still to this day, Lao Tzu, who's
Yep.
sitting right there, who's actually sitting right there and looking at me with a big smile on his face.
Yep.
And this conversation on a daily, I hear him as clear as I hear you, and I am not 3 cents short of a dollar. And so most people, they get this tangible experience, and it's so potent because when you're channeling, as you know,
Yep.
the energy is all encompassing, and it would consciously be quite clear that it comes from above. It's not coming from below. And
Right.
that down, you can call it a download, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
It embodies the whole physical flesh at a subatomic level,
Does.
and when you start oscillating and reverberating, and
Hmm.
the quiver that is effectively the vibrational like imprint that
Correct.
comes
Yeah.
into that.
Hmm.
And so
Yep.
you can hear and experience this potency through the flesh.
Hmm.
I'm an old school channeler, so a lot of my friends are like, well, when you are embodying this and you know that you are whole, there's nothing you can't do. So, it's always
Yep.
cool to take your hand, light a flame or a lighter, put it under your hand. I've left it there for a couple of minutes, pull it away. There's no damage to the flesh.
Uh-huh.
This is
Yep.
part of the self-realized state that we're operating in the now moment. There is
Yes.
no solution to that. And so let's talk about that for you. So when you teach these things to others and you're sharing this potency and this spiritual awakening for many, so many, it's so powerful what you do. How is it? What's the processes for a seeker to find you? And then what's the transformative sort of way that you help them reveal the truth and return them to who they are?
Well, I would have to say the first thing that comes in when that is an attraction rate and they're ready for that is honestly like, what are you seeking? That's my first question. What are you actually looking for in the space?
Right,
You know, I generally do push these questions back on them so that they can have that realization, that self realization.
right, right.
From that point, if they're open and willing and ready for that piece, then we dive into, okay, well, if this is what you're seeking for, what's what you're looking for, what experiences have you had so far that have led you to this space? What have you
Mhm.
been experiencing? What has been your energetic piece, your awareness of the processes that you have currently been through, the processes, if you want to call it trauma, you want to call it uh, imprints, experiences, your even your downloads, because that comes in too. Where like I've had these people come and say, "Hey, I've had this experience and I'm vibrating. What do I do with that?" Right. What do you do with that? So mine is being very present and allowing them to unravel it themselves.
Mhm.
So not as much guidance. I'm not a teacher in any facet. I don't say that I am. I will be present with you while you unravel what you're unraveling and keep the frequency shifting so that you can understand what that awareness piece is. And all I'm looking for is, can you be aware of it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because we're in a full blown shit the bed epiphany for humanity right now, right? So
Seriously.
you have, and it's very clear, and I've had this knowing for a long time. Everything within this state is not as it seems, and that's the paradox of Taoism, right?
Hmm.
You
Yep.
know, you know, two steps to the left, 2 steps to the right. Hang
Yes.
on, did I just say left or right? Yeah. So understanding that it's never as it seems, and from a
Yep.
Taoist perspective, it's a bellows. That's the summation of reality is a bellows. And
Mhm.
people are like, well, what the hell does that mean, Jeffu? I like talking in the third person, by the way.
I like
So
it.
it's like the in summation of bellows is you are contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and
Mhm.
nothing at the same time.
Yes, indeed.
And you return to that unified merging of those potencies of yin and yang, which is the substance within this material state. You can reflect and return to that primordial state of knowing that makes you whole, which in definition is healing.
Mhm.
So you return to whole from
Mhm.
that state. And
Yes.
so, when you're doing these types of things, or you're coming across, evidence or resonance, as you would put it, frequency, you're bringing the frequency, they're mirroring that frequency, and you're returning them to whole through the
Yes.
resonance, so the
Yes.
cracks are more apparent.
Correct.
The
Yep.
deficiency is more apparent when
Yes.
you meet that resonance. There's
Exactly.
only two things that happen in that circumstance. It's either you're repelled or magnetized to that resonance. So
Indeed.
it's that dualistic appearance where people will love you or hate you. It's just where
Precisely.
they meet themselves in their own self-realization.
Exactly. And I've had plenty of both. I
Right.
think that's what also makes it a beautiful space for me to be in, because it is such a dance. Are they going to step up into it, or are they not? Are they going to realize that that's all a bunch of Jurassic shit? Or are they going to be like, oh, hey, there is something greater here. I'm going to resonate at that. And that resonance does attract them into the space, and they continue going. And it's a very, very passive that my clients don't stay for very long. And the people I
Yeah.
work with, they generally don't stay very long. It's very clear whether they're repelled or they're there just for a moment for that awareness piece to go back into wholeness if they so choose to.
Right.
Sometimes that's just one meeting, and
Yeah.
I take a look at them and that's it. And they're off on their own.
Well, I think the biggest, I would say, for this particular moment in history, the biggest
Yep.
disservice to humanity is that so many people are evoking their energy potential, yet they're not. There's no one home, so they have the energy potential activation,
Hmm.
and that's met with the energy body
Yes.
commandeering the physical body, yet there is no clear path or energy regulation to access the Shen, the spirit body. And
Right.
so from that, you get people that are like, oh my goodness, I'm an empath, I'm so sensitive, I'm a clairvoyant,
Yep.
what happens is they get caught in that egoic sort of like diminished return,
Yes.
because they're not able to hold that resonance. It's not possible within this anchor we call the
Sure.
human flesh.
Absolutely.
The flesh and blood that looks back at you in the mirror is this 50 trillion cell potential of electromagnetism.
Hmm.
0.07 millivolts of electricity is at your fingertips, Imperium, Dominion, and furthermore, Maestro of that
Hmm.
potential in any way you choose to. And that energy potential must be realized through that burning in of that infrastructure. This is where the
Absolutely.
method to the madness, understanding how that transpires in the seeker's path to a knower. Because I get so many people that are, I started this, I had a vision, I felt this, I've got all this energy, and they don't have a method to it. So you're not regulated. Within Taoism, it's very simple.
Sure.
I can give you your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state
Yes.
in about 10 seconds, maybe 5. I don't know. Probably even before I even meet you, because the information is there. But
Sure.
people freak out, and I like to ease them in a slow
Mhm.
burn. Because if I say, "Hey, look, do you want me to give you a psychic reading?" They're like, "Sure, give me a psychic reading."
Yep. Yep.
And I'm like, I use it as such because people are familiar with these words. And when you
Hmm.
read the energy, I just start from the bottom. We have 9 dantians between the earth and the
Hmm.
universe. They're the starting points of self-realized embodiment of the flesh. And when you just look at the energy centers, we call them dantians,
Hmm.
you have an excess or deficiency,
Yep.
emotion to virtue. That's it. And
Yep.
all of a sudden, that gives people the complete, remedy to what they've been not revealing to the rest of the world, that's been hiding in the shadows, the
Yes.
darkness that they
Yep.
believe is hidden from everybody, that will never be seen because I choose not to allow it. And that's why we start at the bottom. We start with
Yep.
earth, and then I move to what someone would call the root chakra, the
Uh-huh.
perineum, and that really gives you a fundamental understanding of how spiritually constipated they are, and how
Yep.
many boundaries they really need
Hmm.
to survive their own fragility as a human being. And so you give them a little taste, and they're like, "Ah, that was just a." that was yes. And then when I go to the energy center, they go, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay,
Yep.
we're done. We're done. Well, this shit is real, right? Yeah, it
Yep.
is. And that's the problem. I'm reading from a menu. I
Yep.
have no interest or desire to look for your approval. I don't give a shit. And that's the problem when people go, hang on, well, that's where the information resides in this present moment. So when
Yes.
you access that, you don't give a shit whether you're going to give me the accolades and approval that I'm the next coming of Jesus or I'm
Hmm.
Moses parting the sea. The information is sitting there. I've
Yes.
got there's no agenda where your approval is going to determine whether I access the information or not. And
Yep.
that's where that potency of the now moment is. What are your
Yes.
thoughts on that?
I would have to say that I agree with that. I work in a similar format. It's always with earth first, and I go up the body that way. Now,
Right,
I do have a lot of seekers who come in like, I have this open, I have this like, give me a slight little, and I will always say, I will give you a slight perspective that is my perspective, and I will run into those spaces. As soon
right,
as they start to get very afraid of themselves and those constructs that we're working on to break down, uh, they either decide to stay in or go elsewhere to
right.
unravel that, or decide to keep themselves shut off for forever.
Right,
You know?
right. Oh my goodness. If I had a penny for how many times that happens,
Oh,
I've had huge podcasters on my channel that I
uh-huh.
still haven't published 2 years later. And they
Wow.
were sort of unassuming. Most people are unassuming when they take an invitation from me because they don't really look deep enough into my background. Not that you need to, but when you get in there,
Sure.
you go, hang on a sec, I thought it was some dusty old Taoist priest talking about yin and yang. Oh crap.
Yep.
Yes, they don't call him a master for no reason because there's an understanding of this relationship, this symbiosis that's necessary to be clear on your return. You
Yes.
must be able to replicate and then furthermore share with others this potency, this
Yes.
servitude and selflessness is how your gift is your offering.
Yes.
And it is, it does. It shows the mirror. So you bring in the
It does.
resonance.
Hmm.
And people generally shit the bed. They do.
They do.
Like I've had many of these podcasters, and I've never published their interviews because they go unraveled. And I'm like, you know what? It's all right. Even though I'm donating my time to this conversation, and if I was actually going to actually charge for the time itself because it's a
Sure.
frequency,
Yes.
which we all do, they would have they'd be having a conniption fit because the actual acquired time to currency would not meet their understanding. And so
Yes, of
it's a
course.
contribution, just like you're contributing and your time within this space, even though
Hmm.
there is none, to this conversation in the end result is helping people return. And furthermore,
That's it.
it gives that dropping that resonance into the soup we call reality
Yes.
brings people to that point, and they will
Exactly.
come to this conversation and hear your wisdom teaching and then go further into the seeking as you
Yes.
share the knowing through that teaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
At
And
least
with
that's what the energy is moving its way through. You know,
right,
that's what I want to say in this human format. That's what we hope. That's what the energy is moving its way through, and they get to decide whether they want to take that or not.
right, right, right. I mean, it's always it's so funny when you get I do remote viewing
Yep.
with some of my friends that are,
Yes.
parapsychologists and they're deep into physics and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
when I do remote viewing with my teacher, they're like completely blown away with the
Yep.
information that comes through. And I'm like, that it's even more exciting because I couldn't give a shit about what it is you want to look into. Yet when we
Yes.
go on our little magical mystery ride, the shit that comes up is it's epic and
Very
mind
epic.
blowing. And you're like, holy crap! And then they get all sort of twisted because some of their remote viewing buddies will be like, well, this is the problem with the industry right now. I'm like, dude, I've been doing this for thousands of years. Your remote
Yes.
viewing CIA funded garbage is
Yep.
not something that was it was generated 30 or 40 years ago, bro. Why
Hmm.
don't you wake up and smell the coffee? What we're talking about is indigenous and ancient in its nature of origin.
Yes.
Yet you're trying to make it into some systematic, finite method that's met by a bunch of, physics nerds that refuse to embody the idea to knowing, or idea to belief system knowing that this is actually taking place, because they don't have the receipts for it. Yet I
Yes.
can give you information that will blow your freaking mind. And then once validated, because they're all about validation and
Certainly.
verification. And, it's like, well, how the hell did you come? How did you find this? So it's like, I didn't find
Hmm.
shit. My teacher just gave me the information. You asked for it, I gave it to you. It's like, it's very
Yes.
simple. But they
Yes.
get all twisted with
Hmm.
the method, which is so much met with their psyche.
It is.
And what happens? Their psyche will make it limited. That means that if the universe doesn't have a moral compass. So the moral compass doesn't exist. So when
Yep.
you ask for something, thank you, sir, may I have another? It will be like, okay. So you want to know what experience it feels like to be in love. So what I'll do is I'm going to give you what you need to experience the idea of feeling what it feels like to be in love.
Yes.
They're like, oh shit, yes. Then you will never find what you are looking for. Oh shit, I need to change the way I word this. Or furthermore, do you want to
Yes.
fast forward it to, is the universe really AI? Do you have the correct prompt? Do you have
Yep.
the right prompt to receive the correct information? That's really what this comes down to, because how
Yes.
you word it is what is mirrored back to you. And that's
Absolutely.
where we get this charge right now. The two of us are in union and we feel that charge. It's like,
Absolutely.
holy shit. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, honestly, for myself and my experience, I've been in several of those groups. I've been in with scientists, and I've worked with my teachers and brought the information through. And I don't give a shit what system you're in. I don't care what I don't care what belief systems that you have, or what, I mean, say over like maybe the last 10 years of programming that you've done into that. When the information comes through and it's straightforward, it denies them their reality because they don't know where it comes from, and they're not willing to take a look to have that
Uh-huh.
anchored into their physical being.
Mhm.
So, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild. I think the narrative, and the last remote viewing I did with my buddy was on the Roswell crash, because he's obsessed with
Okay.
aliens.
Yep.
It's actually on my channel. If you take a look at it, I'm as stunned
Okay.
as you are. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there and we're going through, and Lao Tzu's giving me the information. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Are you telling me the Roswell crash was just a an indoctrination of a mind cult from the government? Yes. It's a lie. It's a lie.
Yep.
It never happened. Start to put yourself into this state. And he's just like,
Mhm.
what the I said, give me any material. I want to see anything
Yes.
that would give me an indication, not a knowing, just an indication that that actually transpired.
Mhm.
He's like, well, they found this material. Where is it? Well, yeah, oh my
Yep.
goodness. Do you
Yep.
really think that all this stuff that's going on right now is controlled by a government agency? Are you kidding me? Do you think they have do you think they have the patent on consciousness? Come on now.
Exactly.
Really? You think that, oh, because they're no, what they do is they commandeer your attention with fear. And that
Exactly.
fear is met with that. And like all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, I'm being controlled. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. There it
Yeah.
is, right. We're going to circle that right there. Yes, indeed. In all these facets and systems that we're currently working through. And if you can just be able to see that, now we're still working through a lot of this, and you and I both know that we're experiencing it, we're seeing it. And I want to ask you too, how are you coming across these facets of control with your teachings? How does that look like?
Well, it just it it bleeds into and emanates through basically most of society.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
furthermore, the people that are the sparks of divinity that have woken up to
Yep.
their own true potency
Yes.
end up on my doorstep. And you further to a collective, you can commandeer. I've had up to 1,000 people within one space physically.
Yes.
Back in the day when I used to love doing group healings. So if someone
Yes.
comes with a mental, emotional, physical, spiritual uh, necessity, you come to this union of this collective, and everyone's met with that resonance, and all of a
Absolutely.
sudden, healings from across the spectrum will present themselves on that same day. Now, I do it across the interweb and have for as long as I can remember. We used to call it back in the day distant healing, and that was like very old based sort of like. But that's
Yep.
really what this is, right? So
Yes,
it's
for sure.
psychokinesis. It's the now moment, but being able to see that. So you're commandeered by we you fear off something as simplistic as media, television, things like that. And people are like,
Yep.
I don't watch TV anymore. I don't listen to the news. No,
Yep.
you're got your face in social media 24 hours a day. That's got nothing to do with commandeering your attention. And so people get this inflated delusion of their own power, having what they want to call, I have willpower. Really? Your willpower is met by what you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. So,
Yep.
well, Jeffrey, what do you mean? Conscious and unconscious. Let's just break it down, the watered effects of that. You can only acquire that resonance from your own self-realization. So you
Yes.
cannot meet to the next resonance or the next heightened space of expansion without being able to meet it. So if you
Yes.
believe in something, yet you have no evidence of it, you'll get fleeting moments where your teachers, the consciousness, the primordial mother will give you these intervals where you can dip in and instantly expand. But if you're as dumb as rocks and you're a stubborn, hard learner, which is humans,
Yes.
you're going to present these limitations. And furthermore, I want the long and windy path that is really painful and suffering that comes with the human condition. And so you meet that Sherlock with your Watson, those crumbs that your human condition enters the labyrinth of the intellect, the finite mind, the bankruptcy that you consider as your knowing, which is nothing more than a facet of psyche. That is not your true knowing. You must merge your intellect and your intuitive into that center point, which would most indigenous practices would consider the third eye, the Vesika. We call it the Wu Ji. And then you are able to access what we call Wu Wei, which is called effortless action, effortless effort. It's called the substance we call, or more commonly coined by this guy back in the 70s, the flow, baby. You must be like water.
Yes.
Bruce, baby, listen to me. I really appreciate you. And he comes to me it has been quite some time since he came to me on his 50th anniversary. And I was like, holy shit, of his death. And I'm like, you can't make this shit up. And then he went through the actual inner connection between his relationship with this one entity that was giving him all his desired needs of being superhuman, celebrity, all encompassing. And so because he refused to bend the knee to that energy, there was two options. Either you continue to give me the masses, the purpose of our relationship is for you to give me the body so I can literally siphon the energy from the collective, or I'll take your life and I'll take the life of any offspring that you have. And I'm like, whoa,
Okay. Yeah.
whoa. And
Damn.
he's like, I can't do it. And I commend him for that he refused to comply. And they said, well, you will be an immortal icon, but it won't start with the flesh or longevity. Your death is imminent. I'm like, what the fuck? You can't make this stuff up. You get the chance, and you're like, holy crap.
Yep.
And so, this is this common relationship that people are met when they have these epiphanies.
Yes.
And some people might want to, they might want to, I apologize for that. They might want to what is it? Pretend that this narrative is not taking place, but that's the spark of divinity.
Yes.
And through a collective of maybe hypnotherapists, a psychologist, a physicist, we would refer to this as an ideomotor response. So how do we see that? We see that through pendulums, pendants, dowsing
Yep.
forks,
Yep.
Ouija
Yep.
boards, tarot cards.
Yep.
You are getting information instantly.
Yes.
What are you doing with it? Do we need to bang your head against the frickin' wall initially? Because, hey, it's not so clear to me. I can't believe that I could just like throw some cards down and that transmission is coming through my body and those cards are determinative by the resonance of my, oh, yeah, baby. We got this
Yep.
right now.
Yep.
And so that is so simplistic that people dismiss that. They're like, oh, shit, that that can't be
Yep.
real. Or,
Totally.
the fundamentals of astrology, astronomy, we have a relationship with the cosmos. We refer to it as the whispers of the universe. That
Sure.
has been the ongoing symbiosis between the seeker and the knower and the Tao since the
Sure.
beginning of conception of this very beautiful unity that takes place within this material state.
Yes.
So, it's
Yes.
like it's always showing evidence. Do you, as a shaman, do you use these facets like astronomy, astrology, the stars? You use just, what is it? What is the depth of shamanism? I mean, I've spoken to many shamans, but quite
Sure.
frankly, I've never really got a definitive answer of what that means because it's so general and wishy-washy, which is not who you are. So I'm
Yep.
excited to actually get an answer because so many people claim to be this
Sure.
state of awareness and they can't show me shit. It's
I
like,
know.
okay,
Yeah, I agree with that. No, I'd have to say, like with shamanism, it is wishy-washy. I'll be straight up and tell you right now that that pathway that I took was very clear. That I'm like, no, this is not the space where I want to be in because it pulls from so many different facets. Like, sure, there's like pieces of astronomy in it.
Yeah.
Sure, there's pieces of I would say for shamans though they mostly use like megalithic structures or other aspects like that I would say is an outward appearing stance other than an inward coming into self piece.
Right.
So no, I don't use that as a part of shamanism. It's not a finite answer.
Right. And it all comes down to, I'm a Pepsi challenge guy from the 80s. I'll take the Pepsi taste test with anybody. Show me what you got. And that's where people go, oh, shit. Oh, hang on a second. I'm having bad internet. Hang on. And this happens all the time. And, it's like feeling into your knowing requires no participation of yours whatsoever.
Yeah,
People
not
are
at
like,
all.
what did you just say? Love that third person shit. What
It's the
did
best.
you just say? It requires zero participation from you. What?
Yes.
What? Hang on.
Yep. There it goes. Blown.
Right.
And there they go.
Right.
Yep.
And so understanding that when you become whole, your desire is a default setting that requires no participation from you. And
Yes.
that you can define you as identity, egoic, personality,
Sure.
whatever you want to call it, intellect. There's all variables of the same derivative, but the truth is, it's the now moment. I've never witnessed a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing that has been outside of the now moment. That means I'm every place, every person, everything. I'm no place, no person, no thing. And
At
this
all.
is the effects of that symbiosis of contracting and expanding.
Yes.
So when you're at your lowest, you're really at your highest. And you have the option as an observer, because people love to call that as the observer. Quite frankly, we refer to it as there's a point of no return where you detach and attach as all things. That means every thought, every feeling, every emotion is basically a physical, energetic, and spiritual manifestation of divine word, will, light, love of the Tao.
Yes.
And so that means that your operational system is the animation of the void. So
Yes.
consciousness is just, you are now everything. You tap into everything, and it will start to unravel or deconstruct within the potency of that substance. So it's like, that means that you're sitting here, and if you are the now moment, witnessing, experiencing, or seeing, or commandeering this now moment requires nothing to do with you. And that means that I witness, tumors disappear, bones fuse, gashes seal before my very eyes. This is just a normal day in the office.
Yep.
But, this has been going on for 30 years on a daily basis. It's like, oh, my goodness, okay.
Yep.
What happens yesterday? My kids are running around. One of them eats dirt, head face forward into, asphalt, right?
Yep.
They get up, their lip is the size of a watermelon. My children come together. I have 6 of them. We all come together. My wife comes together. Inside of a fraction of a second, once you in tune to that potency we call diamond of perfection, which is absorbing the riches, between the breath in and the breath out resides the Wu Ji. That is that
Mhm.
potency.
Yep.
So the void will show itself in this phosphorus crystallized form that affects the material state.
Mhm.
And instantly it merges with, so when you return people to whole, it shows through the physicality being the lowest
Yes.
rut or the basement level
That's it.
infantile state. And so
Yes.
you'll see it through the physical. And
Yes, very much
people
so.
are like, holy shit. So you watch their lip literally wiggle. And so from a psychonaut perspective, we look at these things as they start to, you know, quite frankly, all my friends when I was young were met with ecstasy, LSD, pot,
Yep. Yep.
a lot of drugs. Even some of them were taking heroin, all this type of stuff. And I was sort of like at a crossroads where I was met with my physicality. I was immersed in bodybuilding and powerlifting as a young
Mhm.
boy. So by
Mhm.
the time I was 15, I was competing. I was at about 187 pounds at under 4% body fat was my first competition.
Okay.
Now, that was met with, I'm hanging out with all my friends, childhood friends that are like into drugs. And I'm sitting there one day with a muscle and fitness magazine in the corner of the room while everyone's just going sideways, you know, just, bombarding themselves with all this
Yes.
external stuff. And one of my friends is like, dude, you got to go. I'm like, what do you mean I got to go? What? We've been friends. We've been homies for years since we were young boys. Gotta go, man. Unless you take a pill, pop a pill, a window. I
Yep.
think that's what they called them back in the day, LSD, like clear windows, whatever.
Yep. For sure.
You have to go. You're a Buzz Killington. I'm like, really? But we're homies, man. I'm like the keeper, right? I just
Yes.
get out of here, bro.
Yep.
And so I left that. I was met by the time I was 18 or 19, where out of 20 childhood friends, 19 of them had committed suicide.
Okay.
I have one left to this day who still struggles with his version of schizophrenia, and it's met with the potency of the Tao and all the teachings that I share with him, and he's able to regulate that. And
Yes.
quite frankly, if he felt into it completely, he would switch on whatever senses are necessary for him to commandeer whatever is directing his attention. And so this is a relationship that must be met with a complete activation, which he's been dancing with for his whole life. But when
Okay.
I experienced this shit, I thought I had circumvented the chance of having a psychotic break by losing my mind, and then furthermore, but through that course of action that I shared with you earlier, I thought I'd lost my fucking mind. I
Yeah.
was like, holy shit. And so
Yep.
when you witness a physical healing, I need people to understand this. It
Yes.
becomes potent, and you start to see what you see with your eyes open. Things will start to wiggle and shift
Yes.
and wiggle and shift and wiggle and shift and wiggle and shift. And it's like, you're like, hang on a second, I need to,
Oh, totally.
and you will see it transform and mend back to its whole state. And
Yes.
so, what I like to get people to do is start with things like bending metal, because it has the
Yep.
same properties and foundational heat, because the healing is no
Sure.
different. As you
Uh huh.
transmute that, you're witnessing it. Your
Yes.
attention intention will be
Yes.
formed through what we call the Bai Hui. It comes down through the 9 eyes within the upper dantian. You shoot that potency out like Superman with X-ray vision, and you will start to form that diamond, and
Yes.
it alters the material state instantly.
Yes. Yes.
It's like that charge you and I are getting. You're like,
Yep.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, my friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, in my experience, I want to say I'm going to go back to one of my favorite experiences with that when I witnessed somebody who had cancer in all their lymph nodes and in their liver. Uh, within 10 minutes have the resonance field come through their body and their systems, just with awareness itself. Awareness itself, in witnessing that as the resonance field and the energy is being witnessed, it starts to make that shift, because we're having a co-creative dance. I was having a co-creative dance with that. And 10 minutes, all of it, intershift out, everything closed back up. Most beautiful experience to move through, also to watch. And that person left, and I just come back to beauty. That's just one of my favorite pieces. I just want to share that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's shockingly sobering when
Yes.
that person would leave, then they'd go and get their blood work and go, their doctor's like, "What the?
Yep.
What happened? What?" I mean, this is more common for me. A lot of people come to me. It's like in the wet ass hour. They're like, "You're that guy they told me to call." I'm like the cleaner from Pulp Fiction. It's like, "You're that guy I need to call." And it's more common. Grandma, someone's in a coma, they're on their deathbed. The doctor has given them a fucking proclamation that they're gonna die. And I'm like, no, hang on a second, let me talk to grandma. And they're like, holy shit, this guy, they're like, this is really happening. I'm like, no, she's not going.
Yep.
And they're like, no. The doctor said the vitals are a critical mass level. There is nothing but a downhill trajectory from here. Their imminent death is going to be realized in the next 24 hours. No. And then the next day, boom, she comes out, vitals are regulated. The doctor goes, what the fuck? How did that happen? Because this is what happens when you help people remember who they are.
That's it.
So all we're doing is bringing a resonance. We're being able to hold the resonance. So one of the potencies of this is having a container that can maintain that resonance. The reason that transitory healings take place, that people are discontent and disappointed by these very effects, is because they're unable to harness and maintain that healing.
Yes.
Because it's not met with their complete surrender embodiment. We refer to it as the sacrifice. The selfishness to the selflessness that's entered through the sacrifice.
Yes.
And so that sacrifice, as puckering as that feels, like, I don't want to give anything. I don't want to lose my life, because you use that word to identify with something that is so sacred and so ritualistic to the individual, whether it's money, whether it's life, whether it's objects, whether it's their physical basically sovereignty.
Yep.
They have to be able to realize that your gift is your offering. When you surrender, this is the symbiosis of contracting and expanding. There is a completion and then a creation, and this is happening instantaneously. So once you enter that point, you are constantly doing this, and it's doing this all day long. And like you can enter it at will without this whole, oh my God, your gift is your offering. And so people are like, well, what does that mean? Here's a classic incantation I use from my teacher, Jade Emperor. A power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all. Revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. And that visceral, kinesthetic, somatic response that we are experiencing as this union is present, and furthermore, the observer, anyone witnessing this or experiencing this in the now moment or in the so-called future, will experience this right now.
Yes.
And that potency is not just empty words. It's imbued with this currency and is met with a perfection. So that reflection, that gift is your offering, will be revealed.
Yes.
And so people just don't realize. So when you're in service to others, you're in service to yourself.
Yes. What? First and foremost.
Right.
Yep. Circle that.
Right. And this is the epiphany that most people don't, come to that conclusion, because they're in such inverted effects of their experience.
Absolutely.
That, what people don't understand is, oh, well, I'm intuitive. That can be met with a complete inverted deficiency.
Absolutely.
So taking on that intuitive state and not meeting it as a whole by merging the yang energy and
Yes.
unifying it,
Hmm.
you will start to see the oppression, depression, possession that comes from too much.
Yes.
What? You've got too much. Absolutely. Your
Absolutely, it
needle is
is.
moving to one side.
Hmm.
You're
It
absorbing
is.
all that, and it starts to show itself. So I'm intuitive. I can do psychic readings. So, and you'll find this with a lot of psychics, mediums,
Yep.
channelers.
Yep.
They have this overshadowing, this
Hmm.
what they perceive as darkness, because they're literally overdosing on yin energy and
Yep.
incapable of the admission and the expansion of the yang with the yin. And
Yes.
so you see, I've got all these superpowers, but I'm super like deficient and confused and met with like depression and sadness and
Oh,
hopelessness and
of course.
helplessness
Of course.
constantly over and over again. But I could give
Yes.
everyone else their answers. And you're
Yep.
like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
okay.
And where are you doing that yourself? I see that so much. It's constant. It's out there constantly where that is what they're doing with that yin, or I'm just going to that female energy running through there very intensely. And
Right.
to pull back into balancing out that with the yang is almost something that I just don't see it so often. They like to stay in that attachment of, I am seeing this and I'm going to tell you all your answers, but I don't want to look at my own. Thank you. I
Right.
don't want to bring that back into balancing of self. It's just, yeah, I just see it so much coming through the space.
Right, right, and it reverts to the admission and the overdose of yang,
Very much
the
so.
material state. So,
Yes.
it's a diminished transitory effect of the
Yes.
physicality. It
Yep.
has a diminished return. You want a permanence that is the embodiment of all that,
All of it.
that
Hmm.
will include the longevity of the flesh through this material
Yes.
state. So,
Yes.
that's no plug, but let me just plug my book, Return, the immortal immortality
Yes.
crystallizing the material state.
Correct.
Taoist alchemy, baby. Oh yeah.
Alchemy all day
And that
long.
that that to me is, so important because, most people use Eastern philosophy or religion as this sort of like, oh yeah, you're just a mind, you're still, and peace, love,
Sure.
dove, baby.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's absolutely contrary to the actual directive of these belief systems. Taoism is completely the opposite of Buddhism. Yet people go, oh, it's the same. It's
Oh,
like
they
you
will.
guys are this style.
Yep.
So I've got 20 Buddhist monks that are friends of mine, and they are about sitting on top of the bay watching the dukkha,
Yep.
the distortion, and their
Yep.
reality is really simple. I Stan, I'm not into that energy bullshit. I just want to see distortion. I want to decimate it, dilute it, and then reinvest it back into the experience. But what that requires from my part is to constantly find more pain and suffering. I'm like, okay, bro, whatever you want, that's up to you.
Yep.
Buddhism is really simple. Buddhism for me is like a pile of shit covered in diamonds. They just grab another diamond and look for more
For sure.
shit,
For
and
sure.
they want to toss away the avatar, where a Taoist doesn't, is not met with that. Their belief system to knowing is this self-evidence and the experiential moment of expansion. When you ask the
Yes.
Taoist, how are you doing? It's good to be me, because a Taoist path is a pile of diamonds covered in shit. We just toss off some more shit and find another diamond. It's another day in paradise.
Yep.
This is how you start to merge with this contracting and expanding and
Expanding.
realizing
Yep.
that symbiosis
Yep.
is completion and then creation. And this is happening. It's never ending.
It's never ending. Per second moment. We're always in it.
Right. And
Continuous.
you can see that evidence through your own
Yes.
experience, but it
Yes.
must be met with the now moment. It cannot come from the past or the future.
Nope. Hmm.
And that will require a method of resonance that can bring your attention being the most valuable commodity and aligning you with that ascended state. So your consciousness, your version of that is the now moment. So the
Yes.
embodiment is the primordial mother, the animation behind the consciousness
Right.
that then will show you the receipts. The receipts are met with evidence and self-repeating self-realization. So it can be repeatable. This
Yes.
is a very key part of this whole experience that I think people are missing. and they get
Absolutely.
caught up in that semantics. Within magic, within
Totally.
Taoism, we have
Right.
the model is quite clear. We lay down a 9-point grid on reality, and we commandeer the energies of the universe and create or destroy anything within our purview. And people are like, destroy? What are you talking about? It's just a creation and a
It's
rebirth.
it's it's
Relax. Don't worry about it.
constant, exactly,
Yeah,
constant creation and rebirth. And I had to
right.
stop and laugh at that because the amount of times I've told that story about the Buddhists and
Yeah.
sitting on their mountain and then also continuing to be in suffering 24/7 is a smackdown that I see all the time as well. So coming into like the Taoist version of
Yeah.
things and having that be balanced and really experiencing the attraction and expansion and the continuous state of birth and death and allowing that to just be is a whole different state that I don't see many people embodying at all. It's not something I see around much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of people will come into a conversation with me and go, I had an epiphany. I've channeled this new way to do things. And I'm like, are you sure you're not a Taoist? And they're like, what are you talking about? And then I explain to them the lens of reality through a Taoist path. They're like, oh, shit. I thought I was special. It's like, holy shit, it doesn't matter. It's
Yep.
just a contracting and expanding. It's not
Yes.
about the identity of it. It's not a lens to go, oh, well, this is the only way. If you have an absolute, whatever it is, and someone comes to you with absolute, about face and run in the other direction. It is only your absolute is met by your truth. Your truth is met
Yes.
by your knowing. Your knowing is created by your experience from the belief system to the experience to the knowing. And
Yes.
if it comes in all different forms, and this is the part that I love, there's a million ways up the mountain.
Yep.
And so when someone gets evoked, when I go, oh, do you think you're a Taoist in a past life? They're like, oh shit. This is an inverted deficiency. It's not going,
Yep.
oh, Taoism is the only way. No, it's just
Hmm.
realizing that this is the very fundamentals
Very
of
much
this
so.
whole space. That's it. Just
Yes.
so happens I can give you an identity of it through a Taoist path. Doesn't mean it's an absolute. You can then refer to it in a million different ways in the
For
same
sure.
ballpark. You could go, it's the indigenous practice of a Buddhist belief system that would bring you back to this self-realization. I
Yes.
find that a little difficult. But yes, you can find it through that way. And people get evoked. So when something triggers you and
Hmm.
it meets you with that, understand that you're becoming whole. You are
Yes.
healing. That's
Yes.
it. It's nothing more. And so
Absolutely.
when you're met with that, you're like, oh wow, okay, that's crazy. How is that possible? Yes, it's very possible.
Very much so.
Uh,
Very much so. And that's a circle for me too is when you hit these points just to stabilize that, you're on the right track. You know, you are healing that. However you want to perceive it or which pathway you want to go down, once you hit those pathways of triggering and the contraction and expansion piece and understanding that you are constantly doing that, then then I will leave that. Then.
right, right. Well, it's good to be you.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
within cosmology, the relationship of the cosmos with the Taoist seeker,
Hmm.
that symbiosis is met with, the fundamentals, the zodiac signs that are, one
Sure.
for every 12-year cycle,
Yes.
plus we add the 5 elements. That brings the number to 17, but the ultimate number of completion for a Taoist is 9. So where is that other element that returns to the 18? And people are like, well, you said that 9 is the highest number of completion. It's the hardness of the diamond. That's how we create
Sure.
the between the breath in and the breath out. There's a condensing we call absorption of the riches, and that shows itself through the physicality. How do you
Yes.
meet that? Is the 18th point is you are all things.
Hmm.
And people go, well, what are you talking about? Well, the feng shui, fear peddling, zodiac,
Sure.
astrologist,
Yep. Yep.
astronomist,
Yep.
cosmologist, biologist, neurologist, physiologist,
Yep.
psychologist. They're all limited as best, yet they have a path that they believe is an absolute. That is the very point of discontent and a contention that will be met with a limited return. Because when you understand that you are all things and
Yes.
that is your truth, that is your breathing, very evidence of that, anything is possible. But
Absolutely
with
anything.
anything other than that, you're going to be met with the limitations of that lens of reality.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And it's like, whoa.
Exactly. Everything and nothing at all. That's always my first format. Everything and nothing at all. And that
Right.
even in and of itself stumps people.
Right. Right. Right.
Energies. Hmm.
It's that simple.
It is that simple, literally.
Right. Right. It's like, so with this conversation, let's lead us into your practices. You do one-on-one sessions, you do group sessions, you do healing. What is it that you offer, a seeker of your wisdom teaching?
Essentially, what I offer them is a place where they have a space to actually seek what they want to seek,
Hmm.
to be where they're at. I hold the frequency and I give an allowance. Now there is
Right.
guidance points there. I do give teachings. Those teachings are very dependent on the being coming into the space because it's a different perspective.
Right.
So they will differ, but they are very close to the Taoists, I would have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very
Yep,
cool. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation today, my friend.
sure has been. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
it very much.
Always love yeah. Yeah. In closing, I'm going to ask you one last question. What's your definition of spiritual consciousness?
I'm gonna meet that with I don't have a definition of spiritual consciousness because
Right.
that would put me into a space of attaching to what that was that and then what that is in a perspective, and that's not a
Right.
space I want to be in.
Love it. Love it.
Mhm.
Over 400 podcasts, never got the same answer as I should not, because we're all a facet of the diamond of perfection.
Yes. Yes.
It all meets back to the same place. There's a million ways up the mountain. Once you dismiss
Exactly.
someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And so I want everyone to go out and check out what Z has to offer in relation to her one-on-ones, other teachings, everything within her social sphere and interweb that will be put under this podcast. It's been a real pleasure having a conversation with you today, my dear friend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you
Mhm.
into my life. And
Mhm.
furthermore, I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us
Yes.
today.
Thank you.
I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.